good. I want people to see how gorgeous you are. So there we go.
Oh, yeah. Ashley, you're too kind.
No, stop. Hi, how gorgeous is she? Hello, everyone. I'm just screaming. I'm so excited. This is Ashley Koff, registered dietitian and CEO of the Better Nutrition Program. The Better Nutrition Program was created to create with practitioners better nutrition assessments so that we can help practitioners and their patients come together around understanding what your body needs and is your current nutrition delivering what your body needs. Because if it's not, your body doesn't have what it needs to run better, and that's what we need to fix. So through that, I do these Better Nutrition expert interviews as a way to introduce you to some of the experts that we are working with. And what do I mean when I use the word expert? That's an important thing today because a lot of people are given a lot of information. Experts is not actually about the number of years you've been doing or the alphabet soup after your name. What I'm looking for are the people that understand the research, can look at the science, understand the research, but then also have been applying it in their practice or understand the application of it if they themselves have not been applying it. And there's never been a space that I think that's more important for than this CBD, this cannabis space. So I am thrilled, whether you're watching us live and you want to just start going with questions, or if you're watching us later, you can also ask questions, and we'll come back to Laura for that. I'm so thrilled to introduce Laura. Laura Lagano is a dietitian who I've known of for forever because she has been working in this space, in the hemp, the cannabis. We're going to go into all the different definitions of all of that for quite some time as an integrative nutrition expert, but also she's who teaches practitioners how to understand this. So if you're a practitioner that's watching and learning about CBD, this is the person you want to learn for. She also, for those of you who watched the conversation that I had with Brooke Alpert, the founder of Daily Habit, the course, that whole certification that Brooke took was a collaboration and really founded by what Laura and the team at Holistic Canna have done. So that's a course, a certification. So please check that out if you're interested in that certification. So Laura, that's a huge introduction, and I thought I would start off asking you, let's dive in with how did you learn about hemp or cannabis? Like, what put this on your radar?
So pretty much everything that has been in my radar in terms of integrative, I think I started out that way in nutrition. I was never into being, whatever it means to be a conventional dietitian. I was always a little bit off center because my original interest in nutrition had to do with the relationship between food and mood. Because I grew up in a crazy family and my mother drank an insane amount of coffee. And I was a little kid and I thought, you know what? I think there's a relationship between the amount of coffee she drinks and her mood. And she was in the kitchen a lot because, of course, I had an Italian mother who was very interested in food. So there was a lot of love connoted through food. So that was also my interest in nutrition and in mood as well. And she used to listen to, a talk program. And on that program was Ben Feingold. And Ben Feingold of the Feingold diet. So I became very, very fascinated. And he talked a lot about the relationship between food colorings and additives. And this is a very, very long time ago. And of course, now that's much more well accepted, where we have, standard junk food cereal companies taking colorings out of cereals. I mean, that was unheard of years ago, and nobody thought it was a problem. Well, fast forward many, many years, and I have a daughter who is a twin, and that was my second live pregnancy. And my daughter had, just a multitude of issues, one of them being a seizure disorder, several other things. So she has taken me on this journey. She has really been my best teacher. She really took me full circle back to the relationship between food and mood. And then on that journey is when I really started looking at cannabis as really a healing plant. So she is the one who took me there. And it has been really quite a journey. I never, Ashley, ever would have anticipated that after my college experience that I ever would have been on standing in front of people at meetings. I just did a big presentation on cannabis nutrition and the microbiome. Or that I would be sitting here with you discussing the healing benefits of a plant. If somebody would have said to me in college, oh, hey, you're going to be talking, in front of all your colleagues about cannabis, I would have said, "Are you high?"
I love it. And in case anyone was wondering what I was doing, rapidly firing, looking down as opposed to looking up, multitasking. I was making sure to share this to a bunch of our different pages so that everyone can get Laura's genius. So you weren't high. You were actually, really, you've gone on this pathway of understanding the power of different plants as medicine. And your most recent book, the CBD Oil Miracle, is, so first of all, I love the title because we're all looking for miracles, right? I think we all want better health and we're feeling like, oh my gosh, has medicine not worked for me? Or in the case of, complicated situations, as you were just talking about, is there a miracle? And it almost sounds too good to be true when I was actually typing out for a social media post, the subhead to your book. And I was like, if somebody said that this is what a plant could do, I would actually just not believe this, And thanks for joining us, Delane, again, because you watched us yesterday with Brooke and today you're watching with Laura. This is a 1-2 punch. You're really going to learn so much here. So the fact of the matter is that this plant, this cannabis plant, that it actually does have this miracle potential. And so what I really wanted to talk with you about, starting off, we're going to get into some specifics for practitioners in a moment, but is how could it be that one plant, or said differently, how is it that one plant can actually affect so many different positive health outcomes in the body?
Sure. Well, the basic thing to know is a system in our body called the endocannabinoid system. And of course, we did not learn that in nutrition school, at dietetics. We never learned about the endocannabinoid system. No healthcare professionals really have learned about the endocannabinoid system unless maybe you're just starting out now. I'm pretty sure it's not part of dietetics training yet.
Right.
But here's the thing. The endocannabinoid system, which I do want to mention that of course, it sounds a lot like the term cannabis. Mm-hmm. And that's because the person who discovered it was looking at the plant. And I've had people say to me, well, if he were studying sage, he may have named it the endosage system. But the fact of the matter is he was studying the cannabis plant.
Right.
And he was looking at, the lock and key, the receptor system. And I'm going to back up a little bit because I think as dietitians, we all know about the lock and key system. And the best example of that, of course, has to do with insulin and glucose, right? Insulin is the key that opens up the lock for the cell for glucose to get in. Mm-hmm. Well, the endocannabinoid system works the same way. It's a lock and key system. It's a receptor system. So we have receptors in our body, and they're not so cleverly called CB1 and CB2, which is cannabinoid receptor systems. And there's probably going to be more systems discovered. There is CB3 on the horizon right now. And those receptor systems are made for our internal cannabinoids called 2-AG and anandamide. Anandamide is actually just, from the Sanskrit word for bliss. Mm-hmm. And these molecules give us essentially bliss. Mm-hmm. So the best way to think about it is, remember those things called endorphins, Ashley? Mm-hmm. Well, that is not the endorphins. It's actually the endocannabinoids that we're increasing in our body through exercise, through great sex, through meditation, yoga, eating certain foods. All the things we do to reduce our stress actually increase our internal endocannabinoids. Now, the theory is, and this is from a neurologist called, his name is Ethan Russo, that everybody has their own level of endocannabinoids in their system. Whatever that, and he refers to it as an endocannabinoid tone, and he believes that some people have an endocannabinoid deficiency. And what he looks at is, he has used a number of different comorbidities to take a look at that. Essentially, it seems as if any chronic disease, particularly in the autoimmune category, there is something going wrong with your endocannabinoid system, whether it's the actual receptors or whether it's your production of endocannabinoids.
So I'm gonna have you pause for 1 second. We've gotten some very interested people who are joining us. So I just want to make sure that they have a pathway forward. And we've got people who are not practitioners themselves and also people who are practitioners. So one of the things, guys and gals, is that Laura is one of, and really is a foundational expert in the Better Nutrition CBD guide. And I bring that up. That's over at the Better Nutrition program, and you can get it there. And also, if you are watching us live today and you tell me the name of the system that CBD works on, I'll give you a hint. Laura keeps referring to it. You'll be entered to win a copy of the CBD guide. And the reason I bring up the guide is that several of you are asking very specific questions, and both in that guide and then in amazing detail in her book, you're going to get the very prescriptive information. But we are here in a moment going to dive into how can you use CBD for things like, as Laura was just saying, if it's a lot of chronic disease that may, and conditions, when we're talking about pain, or we're talking about anxiety, or we're talking about, digestive issues like IBS, what would, in her book, she goes specifically by each one based on the research and also the practice information. And we're going to tap her brain on that here. So we want to carry on. She was backing up because we want to understand that CBD is going to actually work to help the endocannabinoid system work better. But yes, Jody, you are going to get your answer on medicinal CBD. We're even going to explain the difference between CBD that has THC and CBD that doesn't have THC. So a lot to talk about here. All right, Laura, keep going. Yes.
Okay. So let me just qualify how CBD works. It actually does not work directly on the endocannabinoid system. It works allosterically, which means that it works essentially on enzyme pathways that influence the endocannabinoid system. And of course, as dietitians, we like to be very exact in those things. So that's really important for people to know. When we talk about the cannabis plant that contains a multitude of cannabinoids. So CBD, cannabidiol, is one of them. And then, of course, there's its cousin that is very well known, which is THC. So that is the cannabinoid that confers, or that can confer, an intoxicating effect. So I want to just talk about those cannabinoids for a minute to understand the similarities and differences. What's really important for people to know is that THC and CBD are both psychoactive. A lot of people will talk about CBD and say it's not psychoactive, and I understand that this is sort of a language thing, but because CBD works so well as an anti-anxiety compound, this is why we know it's psychoactive. It works the same way as some actual medications that are given for anxiety. It works on the exact same serotonin pathway.
And so maybe, Laura, because again, and it's so hard, we're having both practitioner and non-practitioner conversation, but maybe in doing that, if we explain the difference between psychoactive and intoxicating. So intoxicating would be the high, and then let's talk about what psychoactive is. Yeah. Sure.
So psychoactive has to do with what is the most popular psychoactive compound that we consume every morning? It is caffeine.
I was going to say, most of us are having our Joe. That's right.
So caffeine is a psychoactive compound, right? That is what we're talking about with psychoactivity. CBD also has psychoactive activity. When we talk now, one of the things we should know about CBD and all the cannabinoids, it has a biphasic response. I'm trying to draw with my hand a biphasic chart. That means that at one end of the spectrum, it can have one effect, and at the other end, it has the complete opposite effect. This does not happen for everybody. So this is true personalized medicine. So we're talking about, and I'm totally generalizing here, but at a low dose, the effect may be invigorating, and a higher dose, it is sedating. So this is where we'll see people have a lower dose in the morning to be invigorating and a higher dose at night. But this is, I'm totally generalizing. And, we know this in nutrition, that there's things that are generalized all the time. So we have, let's say, a certain level for population based for nutrients, but we know that those values are different for different people. Right. It is beyond the same for cannabis. It can be very different. And I do want to mention that for some people, CBD might be completely inappropriate. And I want to give a big caveat about that. I don't feel like people should be running out and getting CBD. You have to be really careful, in particular if you're taking any medications, because there is an interaction. And for a lot of medications, it potentiates the effect. So you have to be really, really careful. And one little tip is for any medications that are involved with grapefruit juice,
right.
It's always a little warning there, but that's just a generality.
And we talked a bit about that. I think that's so important. And in the CBD guide, we go through very clearly what you should be thinking about. When Laura's saying potentiates, I think that's a great way to think about that is if CBD actually helps you get better, you may need less of your medication. You might be able to come off of a medication. You may use a different medication, but your practitioner may not know that any of those changes are occurring as a result of an improvement in this endocannabinoid system if you don't tell your practitioner that you're starting off with a CBD. One of the reasons that we created the CBD guide is so that a patient interested in CBD can go in. I recommend taking the guide in. I recommend taking Laura's book in and having a conversation with your practitioner. If you want to really have an awesome conversation with your practitioner, send them the guide and her book ahead of time as a way to have them be up to speed, because a lot of practitioners have not learned all of this information, and that way they'll feel more empowered, just the way you would feel more empowered to have a conversation with your practitioner if you have the information, that they need from you. So I want to dive into, just because we want to keep, I know we've got a couple of people on here who are just dying to know. They really want to understand how, and we don't want to shortcut the information on how CBD works, but when we're talking about CBD and different medical diagnoses, how do we look at, there are two different areas that we're going to focus on. The first is based on what your health goal is. So if you have a disease, if you have heart disease, if you have diabetes, if you have inflammatory bowel disease, if you have a syndrome like IBS, how do we figure out, is CBD something that could be helpful for you? And then the second part is, what form of CBD how do you sort of assign what form of CBD on that part?
Sure. So we know that, as I said, CBD is one of the cannabinoids in cannabis. And I just want to give a little, prelim about what is cannabis. So we have the cannabis sativa plant, and then we have a plant that we refer to as marijuana. This is not the definition that botanists would give, but this is the generally accepted terminology. That when cannabis is called marijuana, it means above 0.3% THC. And I would like to add that most of the marijuana that's available in dispensaries and definitely on the black market is well over 0.3% THC. And I do want to mention there are many conditions for which the THC is necessary. When you have below 0.3% THC, that's referred to as hemp.
Okay.
The CBD that we're referring to today is CBD derived from hemp, and that's what you're seeing everywhere.
But I love what you just said. There are some conditions that you really want the THC and not just the 0.3%. What are some of those conditions? Because that's obviously going to be somebody who then needs to be learning about, and I think this is what Jody's asking about medical, what we'll call medical marijuana or medical CBD, where we're including the THC in there. What are some of those conditions?
Well, for pain, for chronic pain, for sure. THC can be very valuable. Depending on the type of PTSD that people have, that is also very valuable. And I do want to add, however, there is genetic testing that you can do with, looking at your endocannabinoid system, because for some people, a THC containing cannabis is actually going to trigger sometimes can trigger paranoia. So we do want to be careful with that. But that also can sometimes do with the cultivar, or what's better known as the strain. Addiction. Cannabis is being used as an exit drug from addiction. I know this is shocking for people because they think, well, we learned that, cannabis.
The gateway, right? Yeah. That's right.
Gateway.
Yeah.
And, for people, for most people who have used cannabis, they did not become, heroin addicts.
Yeah.
The thing is that most people who become addicts have used cannabis, but the reverse is not true.
Right.
So there are numerous conditions. And I do talk about that in the book.
Yeah, no, and that's why sometimes on some of this, I'm just like, you know what, get the book, because the amount of research and how user-friendly this book is, I cannot recommend it highly enough. I will just keep going on. So valuable to get. And I think one of the things that you were just bringing up, I think this is a space where people are in, which is, for whatever reason, some people are just concerned still about THC. And said differently, like my brother, I have a family member, he gets drug tested. So for his work, we cannot have him. We're actually, and it's an okay risk for him to be taking in something that has the 0.3%. We've decided, medically, okay, that's all right on that part. So let's say that you're not able to take in the THC, or your state does not have medical marijuana being legal, and you want to go the route with CBD. Is it possible to still get benefit for using the full spectrum CBD that for pain or for any of these other conditions, or is it that you're not really going to get that full entourage effect because you're not getting that THC in there?
Well, this is a big discussion in the cannabis community. The thing is that, first of all, CBD, as I said, is one of the cannabinoids. Full spectrum, which often is used interchangeably with whole plant, means that you are getting the full spectrum of cannabinoids. You're getting a very small amount of THC. And you may also be getting, depending on if it's been decarboxylated or heated, you may be getting things like CBDA and THCA, which are the acid formats of the cannabinoids. And we do see very big benefit. In fact, CBD is the component of the plant that confers the anti-inflammatory and the antioxidant benefit. CBD is an incredible antioxidant. So think about it. We know that most chronic disease has an inflammatory component. So let's think about how CBD can be applied in those cases. So and especially when you're adding that with good nutrition and with an anti-inflammatory food plan, you're talking about you're really kicking up the benefit of the food plan. And then you add in other modalities such as, yoga, meditation, just completely de-stressing. Then you're really, really changing now how your endocannabinoid system is working with the other systems of your body, particularly if you're looking at your GI system. From my perspective as a practitioner who is, trained in functional and integrative nutrition, I'm always looking at the gut first. Because the gut just drives everything. And I think we know now that the microbiome is what drives everything. And, a lot of people who work deeply with the microbiome will say, who's hosting who?
Yeah. No, I think that makes a ton of sense. And so digestive, that is actually one of the key areas to be thinking about. And it's a great segue into the conversation, because when we put things on our skins, of course, we have to remember what goes on our skin as well as what goes in us is going to be impacting our overall health, right? And what goes on us often goes into our system without the same kind of vetting that the stuff that goes inside of us as it's vetted through the digestive system. So there's a lot of CBD popping up in topicals. There are, patches, there are oils that use topically, there are creams, now there are beauty products. Let's talk a little bit about the merit there and then, any of the concerns that you have about, or said differently, what you need to look for in the topical side.
Sure. I actually just did an interview with a topical magazine on exactly this topic. So once it's released, I'll send it to you.
Wonderful.
And you can share it with your community, Ashley.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing about topicals is that this is sort of a less threatening way for people to embrace the cannabis plant, because we all know that there's canophobia, right? I wrote an article for Huffington Post about this, I think 4 or 5 years ago, and it's changed, but it is changing slowly.
Right.
So topicals are a great way for people to say, hey, you know what? This makes sense. I'm going to try this product in topical use. So it's coming out in everything from mascara to all sorts of serums for the face and wrinkles and, pain, everything. I cannot keep track of all the products that are out there, but here's what I can tell you. It is it's an anti-inflammatory, it's an antioxidant. It is very beneficial topically. Many of the products that are out there are combined with other ingredients. So for a lot of the pain products that are applied topically, they're combining that with things like arnica, with mentholated products that we already know are good, for topical, for pain management. So that makes a lot of sense. But, in essence, you can actually take some of the products that are available to use orally, and you could apply, very minute amounts topically and see, how that works. And many of those manufacturers actually suggest that. So I think that a lot of companies, of course, are jumping on the bandwagon because CBD is just the darling. We're always looking, as you said, for that, for that miracle product. And, I try not to throw around that term too loosely. That was totally the book publisher who wanted to use the term miracle. I was a little.
It sells. It totally sells, and I think it also gives you pause. I think she was totally right. It sells because it gives you pause. We're not meant to believe in miracles, but you know what? We are discovering something pretty miraculous. And once we start to, and what your book really helps us do is understand the miracle and then apply it. And I think you answered Jody's question. She was asking really about this whole, there's so many bandwagon products and how do you really navigate that space of what to look for? It is something we go through in both the guide and also in Laura's book. But one of the things you were touching on is how all of this works together, that you can't just take a CBD product and not upgrade your diet to an anti-inflammatory one or, some of these other pieces. What are some of the ingredients in products with CBD what are some of the ways that you could sort of off the top of your head say, I think this is going to be a better product versus I wouldn't go near that?
Okay. Well, the first thing you have to do is look at products to see whether they contain the full spectrum or an isolate. So like anything, you can isolate an ingredient from a plant. I mean, this is not a new thing. I think the first thing we have to remember is that cannabis is a plant. And when we talk about full spectrum, we could talk about that in synergy. We could talk about that in any plant. I mean, of course, we've isolated lycopene, let's say, from tomatoes. But we, as dietitians, believe that a tomato is better than lycopene. Well, it depends on what the purpose is, right? And we know that if we want a really high amount of lycopene, we maybe can't get it in one tomato. And we also know that the tomato has to be grown in certain soil and a certain time. And are hothouse tomatoes as good as Jersey tomatoes? Well, probably not. And we also know that tomatoes contain terpenes. Well, cannabis contains terpenes too. So I want everybody to be thinking that this is a plant. So let's think about it as a plant. But what we do know is that cannabis and CBD seems to work better when it's within the full spectrum. And we don't know everything there is to know. And why don't we? Because it's a Federal One designation, meaning that it's listed as a Federal One drug, cannabis is, so that we haven't been able to do a lot of research on it. Schedule 1, not Federal One, Schedule 1, it means that it has high potential for abuse and no known medical benefit. Doesn't that seem a little odd?
Yeah, that's right.
That we still have that. So I'm not going to comment on politics, but we do need to remember that that's why there isn't a ton of research. So when we look at CBD products, we need to look to see, is it an isolate or is it full spectrum? Now, what I can tell you is that you had mentioned your brother, Ashley, and you decided to take that risk. I have patients who have, full boat scholarships. They cannot risk any blood testing.
Yeah, totally.
I cannot guarantee to patients that THC isn't going to show up in their blood. Is it likely if they're taking a CBD product? Well, probably not, but I can't guarantee it.
but that's the same thing as even if you were to eat hemp seeds. Like I eat hemp seeds, 2 or 3 times a day. And I have patients like you. I mean, so for example, in the military, it is still not approved, which is one of the biggest regrets that we have right now. I hope that the change with the Farm Bill, but when you talk about PTSD or you talk about even preventative health or some of the digestive issues around stress, et cetera, our military is, not just when they're in, at the academies, but also when they're out wherever they are working on our behalf all the time. And we have these regulations. So that is an automatic, issue on that part. So we do not mess around with it. And it is such a shame. I actually, some of my favorites, you guys, anyone who knows me knows that I am a crazy basketball fan, like a crazy, so a Cameron crazy from Duke and then all the way through. Well, Steve Kerr, who's now coach of the Warriors, gave a really compelling interview about how with his back pain, they kept wanting him opioids and all this stuff. And it was like, okay, let me go the CBD route. But what does that mean? Now that he's not a player, that wasn't as much of an issue. But you see players all the time where this could impact their recovery, their health, So, you're exactly right. We need to change a lot of this regulation. And I think for anyone who is considering CBD, there is value in understanding that it is both about your drug test, as we were talking, and then as Laura said earlier, it has the ability to, because it can help the body run better, has the ability to change the way your medications are working in your body. So we're just hitting you on all angles to say, enter into this conversation with your practitioners. So enough on that piece. Now I want to go into some of the questions that people were asking are, how would you recommend putting together, a plan around CBD for addressing something? We'll take insomnia and anxiety. Those are 2 areas, trouble sleeping and anxiety. They're probably actually intertwined, but they would love your professional thoughts on that part.
Sure. So those are 2 great topics because actually there are 3 primary reasons why cannabis is used or CBD. So when I say cannabis, I mean either one, but it could be cannabis with THC. It's pain, anxiety, and insomnia, whether it is a recommendation from a healthcare professional or a self-recommendation. So for anxiety, I think that people have to look really, really hard at and diligently at what else is going on in their life. I am not the type of practitioner who says, oh yeah, let's just take CBD or let me refer you to get a medical marijuana recommendation. I really want to do the deep dive to determine what else is going on in the person's lifestyle that may be contributing to either anxiety or insomnia. So what else is going on in your life? So it's very important to do that assessment. So let's think about, a sleep assessment. I'm not talking about a sleep study where you get hooked up to monitors at a hospital. I'm talking about asking the questions like, do you sleep, how long before you go to sleep are you engaging with electronics? Whether it's the television, your phone, a radio, anything, is your room dark? What's going on with the temperature in your room? How soon before you went to bed are you eating? There are many, many questions to ask about insomnia. And once those questions get answered, then maybe we tweak those things. Then maybe we add, a CBD product. So yes, you can add a CBD product. And typically, very often when you're adding CBD to somebody's lifestyle plan, you're not always doing it in the morning, regardless of whether the person has insomnia or not. Many practitioners like to add it at night first. And the key is to start low and go slow. So you're starting with a minute amount. And as far as you had asked before is what's the format? There are so many different formats out there. I mean, you had mentioned Brooke, and I know Brooke has something that's very unique, which is
I'm obsessed. Like I'm now a card carrying CBD. I take Daily Habit every day, and I did not I went into it. I was healthy. I'm like, I don't really think that I need to add CBD. But I start, from you, really after reading your book, after talking to her, I was like, this kind of feels to me, the analogy that I've been offering is it reminds me of probiotics. Like it reminds me of I'm doing something that helps to maintain the health of a system. I'm not actually doing it to treat something, at this point. So I think it does have, so let's actually ask the expert that question. Does it have, how would you think about if you don't have a medical issue right now? If you're saying like, you know what, I'm in this really fortunate position to be a healthy person who still is in pursuit of maintaining my health. Like I focus on maintaining my skin, maintaining my sleep and trying to, age healthfully, and maintain my cognitive function, as I age. So how do you then like incorporate in, or consider incorporating in, CBD?
Well, I think probiotic is a good analogy. I think and another analogy that I think probably more people are using is fish oil.
Okay.
Because fish oil is something that if we remember when fish oil came on the scene, there were multiple companies with fish oil. And then everybody started looking at it and saying, oh my goodness, how are we going to distinguish between these products? And we realized that fish oil had other excipients in it that we didn't want, like heavy metals. Well, guess what? So does hemp. Hemp is what we call a phytoremediator or bioremediator. So it actually sucks up everything in the soil. Hemp was actually used in Chernobyl to clean up the land. What did they do with those plants? I have no idea.
Well, we're going to see the new movie on HBO that everyone who's watching Game of Thrones gets the whole Chernobyl movie. And it's funny that you were just saying that because it's literally like, I think because we're finally able to talk about hemp, there's like a little blip in there. So that made me think of it. But yes, keep going. Yeah.
So that's important to know about. So if we think about CBD as the way we thought about fish oil, because a lot of people who use fish oil, they're adding it in for wellness. They don't necessarily have a quote unquote diagnosis. So certainly people can do that with CBD as well. But I would caution against just going out and buying any CBD. I do think that you need to speak to a practitioner who is very knowledgeable about CBD and what type of CBD to purchase. Because, I'm all for, your local provider.
Well, I'm going to pause for you there because that was a perfect layup into. And Brooke, in our interview yesterday, and if you're not watching this live and concurrently and going, what was yesterday about, you can grab on YouTube or on Facebook the interview with Brooke Alpert, CEO and founder of Daily Habit, where we talked about actually her experience and how she created this product, right? But she talked extensively in this about how she had her interest, her husband's situation spurred her interest. She, had a couple of patients that were open to trying it in conjunction with her so she could monitor things. But that really led her to saying, like, I want to be certified. I really want to learn about this. So she went and took your course, your certification. So for practitioners who are hearing about this, or if you think your practitioner would be interested, Laura, I'd love you to tell us a little bit. We've got Holistic Canna under your name. So tell us a little bit about this, how you were able to actually put together a certification so that there are actually practitioners now. There's a whole network of practitioners who have been trained by you who can actually help people make these better choices. Yeah.
Well, the whole training program came about because of this gap in knowledge. When I started learning about cannabis, I realized, wait a minute, this is like everything is coming full circle in my life, because it wasn't only with my daughter. I myself had autoimmune disease and I had recurrent miscarriage. And we know now that recurrent miscarriage is actually related to a low endocannabinoid tone.
Wow.
And it's really fascinating. And one of the things that I am going to be looking at and researching, and I've already talked to some clinicians and researchers about this, I believe that there is an association between autoimmune disease. Recurrent miscarriage is autoimmune disease. I also was one of those very few people who had hyperthyroidism, not hypo. Most women get hypothyroidism. I had hyper, which is also that's also an autoimmune issue. But it's pretty scary when you're 5'1" and, you lose 17 pounds in 10 days. A lot of people would say, oh, that's great. Well, actually, that's really not great at all. So and hyperthyroidism is a lot more dangerous because all your systems are speeding up too quickly. All of that is actually related to the endocannabinoid system. And I think what we're going to see is that women who have a lot of autoimmune disease, or couples who have autoimmune disease, I think we always like to blame the mother.
Right.
You know, tend to, I think, have a higher incidence of giving birth to children with special needs. So, and ultimately that is also, you know, if we see autism as a continuum, I know a lot of people don't agree with this, but ADD on one end and what we used to call Asperger's, they've changed that. I don't know why, but on the other end, big continuing in the middle. And there's a lot of other issues, you know, related to that. And of course, now I completely forgot what your question was.
So it's perfect. But what we wanted to actually do, you're a typical scholar and expert, and that is that you're not good at promoting yourself and the program. And so that is what I am trying to do to accomplish here. Primarily because we need more trained certified practitioners in cannabis. So what does somebody who comes to, so first of all, if somebody is looking for a practitioner, can they go to your, do you have a place where you list who the practitioners are who have taken your certification? And then the second question is, what does that certification even mean?
Yes. So as far as the practitioners, yes, you can, there is a link on the site where you can find the practitioners who have gone through the training. Yes. There is also, as far as what the training entails, it's 31 modules. The majority of them, 27 of them, are audio with webinar, and all with many experts. There's actually one module with me, which is on integrating nutrition. All the other modules are with other experts in the field of cannabis, clinicians and researchers and scientists. So it goes ranging from everything concerning the Vedic and Ayurvedic principles of the plant, all the way to the last 4 modules are videos on, you know, how maybe can you set up something for yourself, you know, talking about advocacy. So in other words, you know, how would you become a holistic cannabis practitioner? Well, one of the ways to do it is get out in your community to advocate for the plant. People have to see you and you have to be visible in your community. You know, last night I was just at a meeting last night where clearly I wasn't going there to learn about CBD, but I need to be there present to let people know, hey, you know what? I'm somebody who advocates for the cannabis plant. Whether it's cannabis with or without THC, I'm a proponent. And people need to see you. They need to know you're an advocate. So that's why the last 4 videos are there. But the certification, there is an exam, and the exam is not easy.
I've heard.
So, because we want to really make sure that the people who take the exam are qualified and they really can speak to, you know, their clients about the plant. And the great thing is we also have CE credits. You know, the CDR actually approved for 30 credits. And I also have really exciting news that I don't think I told you about, Ashley, but Fency actually contacted me and they asked me to present at the annual meeting in Philly specifically about CBD.
Yay! So
really,
just for a lot of people that sounded like all alphabet soup. What that means is that our academy, the Dietetic Academy, I'm not a member, but we have an annual conference, and at that annual conference, oftentimes topics such as this are maybe ones that haven't arrived yet. And I think you'll see that at like the American Medical Association, or you'll see at the, you know, Academy of Pediatrics, or all these other places where what we need to do is we need to start having CBD there more often, and these conversations, so that medical practitioners, that's where we get together to learn from experts like Laura, but also to synthesize that information with the questions people ask in the audience, or, you know, somebody brings their research along, or you know, that piece. So I just wanted to close with this piece because, as I said, we could go on forever, and we are going to keep having conversations about CBD with Laura, because it is really a part of my mission to help people understand how to make quality choices. You know, I was saying in my interview with Brooke yesterday that I picked up my circular, my snail mail, junk mail from Bed Bath & Beyond, and the whole back of it was an ad for CBD, you know, and so we're getting this everywhere. So, you know, one way is to find a practitioner who has been through her certification. Another way is to become certified. A third way is to actually grab her book, grab Laura's book, which we've got noted here, grab our guide if you just want a quick start into that and to learn from some different experts. And we have delicious recipes in there and, you know, some of those pieces. And then another way would also be to talk to your practitioner. But if your practitioner doesn't feel that they're qualified or have all this information, you can then also share this video with them. You could share all of these different resources. So we're just trying to bring practitioners and patients together around the notion of CBD here and what it can do. But I wanted to close with something I thought was pretty interesting. Somebody asked me the other day if they should take CBD or eat hemp seeds. And so I think this is also an area, so I have been prescribing hemp seed oil for skin, for perimenopause. You know, I call hemp seeds the wild salmon of the plant kingdom. We got the glamour fatty acid, you know, the omega-6 GLA in there. So talk for a second about food sources of hemp and CBD and what we need to understand there in terms of what nutrients you are and are not getting in either of them.
Sure. Well, I am a major fan of hemp seeds. I think hemp seeds are the bomb.
Mm-hmm.
You know, hemp
Mm-hmm.
is a spectacular source of protein and amino acids. As you said, a spectacular source of fatty acids.
Mm-hmm.
Hemp is, and it, you know, it's vegan. I'm not a vegan myself, but I think that it's great for anybody who's vegan. But the difference is that people really need to understand is that hemp seeds come from the seed of the plant. Mm-hmm. And of course, with hemp seeds, we have hemp flour, we have protein powder, we have hemp milk. The seeds, which are also called hemp hearts, those are shelled. Mm-hmm. We have hemp oil. What else do we have, Ashley? Is that it?
We have five. So hemp is naturally higher in fiber, but we see them then extracting the hemp fiber. So as a fiber supplement, you know, as well on that part. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's great. And in fact, when I have, you know, patients who would like to use, you know, a protein powder, mm-hmm. I often recommend the hemp protein powder mm-hmm. because I just think it's a great source. And it's also very, very non-allergenic. Mm-hmm. It's very rare that you have people who have an allergy to hemp protein. Mm-hmm. So that is also another boon mm-hmm. For it. And hemp oil is I find hemp oil to be a great salad oil because mm-hmm. it has a really nice nutty flavor. Mm-hmm. And the hemp seeds are spectacular because for people who have nut allergies, mm-hmm. hemp has a very nutty flavor and you can just, you know, sprinkle it on salads everywhere. One of my favorite go-to dishes for people, especially for people who need to have, you know, a good amount of high quality fat, I say take a half of an avocado, mm-hmm. 2 tablespoons of hemp seeds, some really high quality olive oil, and some Celtic sea salt. That is my go-to.
You're like, I love it. So because you and I we're gonna get together and have a hemp throwdown. I make hemp pesto like it's my job. Like that's my favorite, you know, and because it also gives you the complete protein. It's upgrading, you know, the nutrient value. So the question I think she was asking in that part, and I want to make sure we just get that clarity is, so if you're having the seed or something from the seed, are you getting any CBD there? Or are you, when you're consuming CBD, is it a different part of the plant?
Yeah, it's really a different part of the plant. Mm-hmm. It is the aerial part of the plant. Mm. So when you think of the aerial part of the plant, it's the flower, you know, leaves and stalk. But primarily when we're talking about cannabis, hey, cannabis is the female plant. Friends, it is the female plant. It's the plant with the flower on it. Okay. So most of the CBD you will see in the flowering part of the plant. Yes, there are some companies that use the leaf and the stalk, but what I want everybody to be on the lookout for is we are going to be seeing in the future raw formats of the plant. Mm-hmm. Not so easy for manufacturers to do. because of the stability and everything else. But that's what we will be seeing in the future.
I read about that when I was reading your book, and it got me so excited because, when you understand, their benefits, like of eating raw broccoli versus cooked broccoli. And so when we start to look at this, and I think also in the medicinal space, we're going to see some really interesting things there. So Laura, this is just, we are so grateful that your life has unfolded and taken you and your passion and your personal, health goals and your family health goals, all of this down this path, because otherwise we'd be in this really messy area. And I think that's just what I want to conclude with everyone, which is CBD and hemp and cannabis is a really messy area. We're going to see at least another 5 to 10 years of a lot of messiness as the U.S. tries to figure out on a state-by-state basis what you can do, on a DEA versus FDA versus USDA, on an import versus export. Like, there's just a lot of messiness. And so as a way to minimize how the messiness impacts your personal health or has the potential, but also how you can still engage with something which we know just has a lot of value. This hemp plant, whether it's for, use in textiles or in clothing. Patagonia was just talking about their clothes going back to hemp, etc. We need experts who are consistently helping us think about how we can bring these nutrients in and optimize getting them in and have these conversations with our practitioners. So salute you, very grateful. Thank you for training practitioners, for being one that we can turn to. And for everyone who watched this and is like me and is like, oh, I need more from Laura, get her book. Our guide has information from her, from Brooke, from another friend of mine, Doc Rob, who wrote The Cannabis Conundrum, which is really interesting about what are, as I was saying, this messiness. It's going to help us sort through a little bit of that. And as you start to, if you're a practitioner, I really want to emphasize at least checking out Holistic Canna so that you could see if it would be in your purview. I think you're going to be way ahead of the game to get this certification now. And as Laura was saying, to really be a leader, because we need leaders in this space right now. So thank you, Laura.
Thank you so much, Ashley.
Bye, everyone.